everybody. Welcome back to the Doormat Mom No More podcast. I'm Doormat Mom, where we talk about estrangement, family estrangement, particularly parent-child estrangement, and the ins and outs, the inspirations, the heartaches, and everything in between. So today I have a very special guest. She's Marie Marin. She's a licensed therapist, and I'm going to bring her on a little bit. And she takes more of a holistic approach to treating her parents, which is one of the reasons why I really she caught my attention. But before we start, I want to share a couple things. One, this week, an article came out in Psychology Today. Fern Schumer Chapman wrote it. I'm featured in it. And it's New Voices on Social Media Empower Alienated Parents. And it's a great article. She touches upon the outdated mode of thinking that it's always the parent's fault. And she expands out what are some of the other reasons that this is occurring. So Psychology Today, go find it, read it. It's being picked up all over the place. So like I said, it's a great article. In addition, it was very interesting because there was a video this week between Oprah Winfrey and her best friend Gail, where Oprah had noted that she would never expect Gail's own kids to go estranged because Gail had tucked them in at night and was very had a very real and special and respectful relationship with her kids growing up. And I wrote an article about it. I did a post for TikTok and the social media because I think that's what Oprah said epitomizes, once again, the outdated mode of thinking where it's always the parent's fault. And whether she realized she was doing it or not, and probably not, we really do have to work on that thinking, because not to say it's never parents' fault, because of course we know that, all parents are not made equally. But I tend to think there are a heck of a lot more really good and concerned parents out there than not. So she got a lot of kickback, and we're going to see what her response is, as I know that which I created landed in front of her. So, all righty. I'm going to show a video that I think you're going to love, and then we'll bring our guest on. So let me get over to where I'm going. Okay.
Sometimes the hardest part of estrangement is realizing the other person isn't ready, even when you are. Not because you didn't try, and not because you didn't care, but because readiness can't be forced, and that truth hurts more than silence. Sometimes the hardest part of...
She does some short ones. She does a couple long ones too, but what she packs in there is very telling, because that's a truism. Like I've never heard it, because on both sides, right? So I see estranged parents that are so want to reunite, they want to reconcile. They're doing everything they can to reconcile, and the estranged adult child or offspring, however you want to, is just not ready. And then I see it vice versa, where I get notes from estranged adult children saying, I've tried with my parents. I've tried. I don't know which way to go with this. It's been 2 years. I got one this morning. It's been 2 years. She still doesn't want to talk to me, meaning her mom. So that happens too. But the point is that when the timing is off, you can't force someone to have a relationship with you. And so you have to, my opinion is you have to develop your life in that waiting period. I think that puts you in the best position for reconciliation if and when it does occur. But let's ask Marie as she joins me. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us, where were you schooled? What did what brought you into this side of the field? Go ahead.
Well, actually, I did my bachelor's in business administration and realized that I absolutely detest business. Um, so I went back to school. My kids were basically grown, and I studied to be a therapist. And I started doing family work. And I noticed that that seemed to be a theme, although going to school, we didn't learn about it, wasn't a topic. It wasn't in the books. Take
Hmm.
a course on family relationships and learning about estrangement. I feel like the curriculum is going to be changing. So, how did it happen? It sort of found me because I started seeing a lot of families in this situation, but I also had it in my family of origin. But again, it was never this word. So, estrangement is a new word. It's broken families, and you probably know people either in your family or other people that they just don't see Uncle John because Uncle John did XYZ and he's not allowed back in the family, or maybe one of the younger adults. So it sort of found me.
Okay. And so, what have you found with regards to the expansion of it over the last few years since you started, going that path of treating it? I mean, have you seen a ballooning of sorts, like we have?
You mean in terms of media?
No, I just mean in general. That has it grown? Has estrangement within families grown, in your opinion?
I think it has. I think a lot more younger adult children. And by the way, it is the term adult children is used in clinical books, okay, in clinical jargon. It's okay to call them, although a lot of people get all upset.
Me too.
They are our adult children. So I don't know, it's one of my pet peeves because some people get so annoyed about it. But the truth is I'm seeing a lot more younger adult children in their 20s. And a lot of parents are contacting me that this population of kids, well, that was not what I wanted to say, but young adults
Right.
um, are more likely to say, you know what, I'm not even going to talk to you. And some of them don't even give their parents the time of day. They just stop speaking to them. They go away to college and then they stop, which is exceptionally heartbreaking, especially when you talk to the parents and they've done all the stuff, right? They gave them every opportunity. They were present. They took them to doctor's appointments. And then all of a sudden, the adult child goes to college. This is not all the time. This is
Yeah.
something I'm noticing. And then they stop contacting their parents, and the parents are left just completely devastated and heartbroken. So that's what I'm noticing in terms of an older age group, maybe like millennials. I think it's also older kids are also taking their turn, but I'm seeing more of it in the younger population.
I agree with you. I see it in the younger population too, and it's that segment that late teens to early 20s that are really doing this, and I don't know if it's a you mentioned college. There's a lot of thoughts about and actually now fears in sending your child to college because of all the things that are happening in college to the child. And, that when they come back, you don't even recognize them. And where you would think, okay, right now it's just a phase they're going through. It's causing cutoffs. And, it's almost it ends up being associated with that segment of emerging adult where they're sort of like not being forced at 18 to become adults. They're sitting in that segment, and so they have all this time on their hands. And 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 of course the changing of the world is sort of perpetuating it along. I worry that that whole time period, where it used to be that we were sort of pushed forward, we were pushed in, like when I was growing up, I didn't even think like after 18 that I was going to be, not getting, either going to college or getting a job or, getting off my parents' books. That was something that I knew I was going to do at some point in the near future. I don't think these kids are, thinking they have to get off the books. So there's like almost like a no motivation yet parents are paying for these college educations. As they're paying for the college education, the kid has cut them off.
Mm. Yeah, it's a conundrum to say the least. I feel like there's so much more to the story though than just kids not understanding that they have to be independent. I think they want to be independent. It's just I like this saying, and I've been using it in my work, that they have permission to be cruel. They have permission to be cruel. Um, Not all, some of them must definitely make a stance and say this is not okay because of the tragedy that's gone on in their family. And I never want to dismiss that or invalidate, because I've seen it. I've treated people and worked with young people that have had that happen to them, where it's been impossible to be in relationship with their parents. And then I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of parents that have literally done everything they could. They've said their amends. They've tried everything. And yet, this permission to be mean at times, where they can just say, no, I don't want anything to do with you right now, or I'm not ready, and not leaving a moment's, like a whisper of, well, just give me some time. I just need some time, which would be okay. That would be okay to say, and then it would at least give the parent a sense of hope. Oh, my kid is thinking about it.
Right.
Um, but you see, I talk about a spectrum a lot, that there seems to be some kids that are just so closed, or adult children that are so closed, and then they're mean. Okay. They really are. And then there are those on the other side that literally must do that in order to protect themselves, because there's been so much harm. So it's somewhere in between. And, I really appreciate what you said in the beginning, Laura, that there are parents that do all this, and it's not always the parents' fault. Absolutely not. It's not always the parents' fault. But there are things that parents do. And that's where we have to kind of recognize on the spectrum, where do we land as parents? And the other thing, we all come from the imperfect parent club, just like they're in the imperfect adult child club. We all have the ability to make mistakes, and we make them good.
We do. And we were once in the imperfect child club. Right?
Absolutely.
So I know I was. You say that they have permission to be mean. Who gave them that permission?
I think society gives it, but okay, so I did this study because I was really curious. How did we start with this no contact business? Because it really upset me that because there were some people, as I said, that I spoke to, and I'm like, my goodness, it seems so strange that they've been giving the no contact. I have to go in and kind of assess, like, because some people are in some ways like in denial about who they are and what they've done. All right. So anyway, I did this research, and it turns out that the origin of no contact began with abusive relationships, where there were women that had been abused by their husbands. And in order to extricate from this harmful relationship where they were literally being abused, okay, whether emotional or physical. And we know that there's this bond that happens, and it is extremely difficult for women to extricate. Anyway, what I guess evolved from that, not I guess, it's I know. What evolved was you just have to do a no contact. And that means no contact. It doesn't mean you let them call, you have the conversation, and you tiptoe in and out of being in relationship. You sever ties so that you now are on the other side of the boundary and you're just holding your boundary. Okay. So that's how it started. And then it became more, I think I believe what has occurred is therapy and the ability to talk to somebody outside of our family relationships has increased. Okay. Therapy, anybody can get a therapist if you can afford it. You can get a therapist, and the going there, and the therapist is there to support the person that sits in front of them. They are not there to support the stranger on the outside. So if the person goes in and says, you know what, I'm in a very toxic relationship with someone, and the conversation evolves into, I don't feel safe, I feel like things are really uncomfortable for me, no matter what I do, nothing improves, they could then turn to a conversation that's about no contact. And I don't want to blame anybody and make anybody responsible for that, because after all, unless there is a knife to your throat, adults get to make their own decisions. It's not anybody else's fault, but their own choice to say, I don't want to contact my parents anymore. Can we agree on that? It's
Yeah, that if you're an adult seeing a therapist, the final decision is yours. But I think what's happening today with many young adults is they they don't have the what's the word, maturity. All right. And they're maturing more slowly, and they don't have the maturity or the discernment. And they're looking for almost like another person to help guide them. And, and in certain cases, because like if I'm going to bring in, at least a relationship with God, okay, and this is not a religious podcast, but I'm saying they don't have, that to help guide them. It's almost like there's no one out there that's actually helping guide these young adults, children. So ultimately, the therapist in many cases, what they say becomes gospel. Now that should be wrong, because you should be able to be an adult and have more discernment. But I don't think they are. So many therapists who may not, I think there are some incredible therapists out there. I do. I think they really, but then I think there's a set that are just really are not. And so they say this something and it becomes a problem for that relationship. And the question then also is, you say that they're there to support, the person sitting in front of them, but that's like, what is support? Are you, because there's a difference between just listening and reacting to what you're listening, or the support, which is the larger support, like understanding all of the facts before you give a recommendation. And you can't get all of the facts if only one person is sitting in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting thing. There was a study done, a longitudinal study over many years of men. And they found that people that have higher quality of life, and not just mental health, physical health, everything are those people that remain connected with others, which also includes family. We are better as humans. Mammals are better as mammals if we have a set of people that we belong to. It's, in my opinion, the way it ought to be. Okay, but I'm not saying that to say stay in an abusive relationship. I'm saying that that's the ultimate code of goodness, is to be able to have a family to belong to. Now, I love your point, and I think it's extremely important, because that person that's supporting the one that sits in front of them, that therapist, um, that job is well done when you literally are there to help that person figure out what they are going to do, not to tell them what to do. That's another thing. You're not supposed to, oh, you know what? You should really consider leaving. You help them discover what is best for them. And so there's a lot more going on than just the therapist is influencing, or it's about them telling them, they're better off without their family. There's more to it. It's in part this close relationship that's been developed, and also what's happening in culture. Are we learning about the benefits? Is that anywhere about how beautiful family is? What we're seeing is all this sensational, how when couples break up, all the celebrities that break up, families that go to complete,
Yeah.
destruction. That's what we are looking at all the time.
Right.
And I think that is what's propagated, as opposed to, hey, you know what? Belonging in a family it's the best thing you'll ever have.
Right.
That's how I see it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the moral decline of, it's fashionable now not to belong to churches or houses of worship, where if you go anywhere, you'll see churches that are no longer occupied
Yeah.
by the
It's
drug. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I think that has something to do with it as well. It's so multifaceted. To just pick one thing, it would be, yeah,
Yeah.
you can't, but
Yeah.
um,
You can, and I think that was a good point that you brought up too. Is like the examples that we're seeing, the majority of them feel, or it seemingly feels like the majority of them are examples of like destruction, so to speak, destruction of the relationship, destruction of various cultures. I mean, countries, this and that. So we're constantly seeing destruction as an alternative, as a viable, very first-hand alternative, as opposed to the other, which are other things that people are doing to sort of re-sew their lives back together. I also think we're under this happiness, guys. That you have to be happy all the time. Happiness should rule. Happiness, there's other things beyond. You should never not be happy, but there are other things when you're in a relationship. These things that need to be taught. That sometimes, hey, guess what? You're not going to be happy, but you're in a family. You have obligations to that family, and yeah, sometimes you have to put yourself behind to help whoever needs help in that family. We're just so we as a people just seem to have lost that one for all and all for one approach to. And you can't have family if you don't have that one for all for one type of mentality. So, and I'm seeing a lot of it. It's the return to the real me generation in spades. That's like on fire because of social media and the acceptability and of it. And you can replace your family with some sort of mock family you've created online.
it's true. But you know what? The studies show, and there's a great book by Kylie Agalias. I'm not sure if you pronounce her name that way, but it's Estrangement, a Matter of Perspective. And she interviewed scores of adult children and how they see their perspective on families where there's been abuse, where there's been harm, where there's been real pain. And what we notice from this study, which is, I mean, it's a really good book. It's kind of academic, so don't read it if you don't want to be in the academic mode. But I learned so much from that, because the viewpoint is, I really can't handle the state of the relationship. That's it. I can't handle the state of the relationship. And from these kids, what they say, pardon me, I'm sorry, from these adult children, what they say is that they tried over and over again to be able to be seen and heard. Those are the words, seen and heard. You acknowledge me. You don't gaslight me. You let me talk when I have to say something, even if you don't like it. And you actually take the time to hear what I have to say without trying to convert me to your opinion. That's what they're saying. So now imagine this generation is trying to say, this is my need. I am no longer, because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, nobody was seeing and hearing me.
Right.
There was no such thing. Who was seeing and hearing me? They saw and heard me if I ate my dinner and if I went to bed. There was no, hey, how'd your day go? Tell me how you're feeling. None of that. You remember
Right.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a closer relationship with my dad, so we would talk, about that more. But I can understand we didn't come from generations that generally did that. So
Yeah. And as a result, I think, Laura, is that we didn't know, or many of us lacked the skills to be able to transfer that to our children, where we're actually being able to parent that way. So, again, back to the spectrum. So, some of these adult children are saying, this is not working for me, and this doesn't feel like sustainable to be in a relationship with someone that isn't really paying attention and isn't really there, and my mental health isn't advanced by my relationship with them. So there's that spectrum, and that's what I think is part of what's influencing some of these cutoffs.
I agree with you, and if that's all true, then I can understand the cutoffs. But there are two thoughts I have. One, we've gotten into the age of the gentle parenting mode, and parents have become much more active in listening and trying and giving their children the space, maybe too much. All right, I think probably too much, because they've lost some of the other things that sort of mold the character too, which is why in many cases these kids are mean at times. So I think that give credit where credit is due. There's a lot of parents out there over the last couple of generations of raising kids that I mean, I was very active in wanting to listen to my kids. My door was always open. Their friends would come over to the house and say, I can't believe how much you talk with your mom about X, Y, and Z, when they didn't do that at home. I still ended up having a kid that was estranged, even though that was the policy. You could talk to me about anything. So that's one thing. And then two, I think that there's a difference between a parent trying to hear their child and actively looking to acknowledge the child's perspective and to hear them, then the child insisting that you agree that their perspective was accurate versus the parents' perspective. In that, it might be accurate in the sense that they that it caused certain feelings in them. But I know plenty of parents. You can acknowledge those feelings, like you were hurt by this. This was not, this is not what I did, but I acknowledge you have hurt feelings over it. But parents are telling me that, this did not happen. And unless I confirm to her that this happened, she doesn't want to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about, what are they really asking? Are they really asking to be, acknowledged in their feelings? Or are they asking you to just sign on to whatever they tell you that you did? Because that's not fair either. And that should not, in my opinion, shouldn't be done. Because you're compromising yourself in that.
Yeah.
Your truth.
I hear you. Well, I've heard people have that happen I've spoken to families where that's happened, and there has been outright, according to the parents, lies of things, and they're being asked to say that this happened and that happened. And generally, I always not generally, always tell the parent, do not apologize for something you did not do. You do not make amends for something you do not do. Now, I also say, don't set a boundary you can't live with. So
Yeah.
if you're going to be hard with it, and then now say, you know what, this is ridiculous. You want to cut off? I'll give you a cut off. And then you
Right.
completely close the door to your kid. That's going to be really tough 5 years from down the line when you realize, holy smokes, I actually shut the door on anything. Because what I notice and what the research says is that as people age, they soften because
Yeah.
they realize, oh my goodness, what have I lost? What have I lost?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they get older too, and so their life experience kicks in too. So now they're seeing things a little bit more vivid in the sense of living. Maybe they have their own kids. So I agree. I don't think you should ever, and that's why I'm never going to be the parent that says I absolutely would not, reconcile. I've never say that. And I know parents that absolutely have said that, and I don't begrudge them because I'm not standing in their shoes. I don't know what some of these parents have been through, but I think there's always hope. So I definitely believe that too. But on the flip side of that, I see parents who, the kid, the adult child cut them off, and for about a few years on end, they keep chasing the kid and keep chasing and keep chasing, and then and it's like anything else. If you keep chasing, it just goes further away. It's just like So I would say, don't chase them. You cannot chase someone into a relationship. Let them go. Work on yourself during that time. You should be the type of parent anyway that doesn't need your kid to survive. You don't want to have your happiness reliant solely on your child. If you're like, I can understand the loss and the breakdown and the sadness, and that's very real, and that can happen for a very long time. But at some point, you have to be able to pick yourself up and have your life become, about your life, and not put that pressure on them either. You're raising them to go and have their own lives. That was in the best of circumstances, and even the worst. Well, if they're capable of doing that, then you've done your job. Now everything else is sort of like, would be nice, but that's how I'm sort of seeing it a little bit. What are your thoughts?
yeah. I think you make a lot of very, very good points, Laura, because here, um, I'm not sure I've met one parent. No, I haven't. I haven't met one parent that looks at this and is happy to move forward and live their life without their adult child in it. They're all very sad and grieving.
Yeah.
But that's the work, right? And it's not just for parents that have been cut off. It's also when, God forbid, your husband dies and leaves you with 3 small children, or your wife dies and leaves you with 3. I spoke to a man yesterday who that happened to, and he did everything he possibly could, and yet still, as a single father, never looked for another woman to take her place, did everything he possibly could, and he's looking at the loss of his children. So no one wants that. However, the work is, when these terrible things and tragic things happen to us that nobody signs on for, no one wants, we must move forward, even one small step at a time. And that's emotional maturity, because we do have a life. We were people before our children were born. So we're still people now. And we do have things, if we just take a minute and sit and say, what's going on for me? I'm terribly sad about this. But yeah, I remember I always wanted to write a book, or I always, wanted to do, I don't know,
Yeah.
watercolor painting, anything, and just start doing it, even one small step, one
Yeah.
small thing, and remember that you were you have a life and you matter.
Right. Right. I get where the gentleman sat because I lost my husband when I was 35, right? And so I had four little kids. And there was a point where I had to decide to move us forward. And I didn't feel like it and I wasn't happy about it. And, I didn't have a lot of time. There wasn't like a replacement for him, because you're devoted on raising those kids. And then your world becomes, around those kids. But what you don't want to do is become a burden onto them in their adulthood. So it's just a very hard situation. And like any other parent, you don't know, the impact of that loss on them, regardless of how well you did as a parent, right? You can only see it from your eyes. You can't see it from their eyes. And so that's a really hard position to be in, on top of just being a regular parent, whose kids have gone off and are living the next step of their lives, which you're happy for, but it still puts, there's a loss there. That's something you still have to cope with. I don't know any parent or any mom who says that's an easy transition. That is not an easy transition.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So
I think it's sort of the two things at the same time. You want your adult children to go off and have their life and spread their wings and find their journey. And then at the same time, you still want them. You want them to be around. You want to have those deep conversations. You want to see them regularly. And, it's a hard walk. It really is. And when you don't get to see them at all, it's very, very challenging, very painful.
yeah, no, without a doubt. I've got a few people in my group that actually had siblings that followed suit. It seems like that's also another thing that parents fear, is when one goes estranged, it can be a domino effect in the family. I have one family, she has 6 or 7 kids, and I think four of them went, followed each other out the door. And then there's another two. And so that's also upsetting because, you're seeing clumps of kids, happening at the same time on different reasons, different stories, it's very, have you come across families like that too? Does that?
Yeah. In fact, I just recently got an email with someone I spoke to who wants to have more conversations with me. And that very similar thing is happening, where now the other sibling is siding with the brother, because that's what starts to happen. There's been some kind of conflict, some kind of what Dr. Carl Pilmer calls a volcanic event, something big. And then everybody starts taking sides, and there's a lot of talking, and that's very normal. It's not always the best thing, right? It's better to just like keep it between the two. Otherwise, there's all that triangulation. But anyway, with this particular family, it looks like they're taking sides because of some of the things that were said.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's really hard, but my dad, he's God rest his soul, but one of the things he used to say all the time, and I really didn't appreciate when he said it, and this is not to say that you should never speak, but sometimes the best word is the one not said. Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And that's what one of the things he used to say. Because if once you start talking and yapping and all this and talking to this sibling and that one, it's like wildfire, and things can get really distorted and out of control. But it's very, very painful when the siblings start, kind of cohorting together.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see it with some of the moms. It's just heartbreaking to watch this. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that, these young adults today have real problems with communication because of the age they've grown up in. When I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, you had like rules that your parents taught you about communication and how to handle certain situations, and you say this to someone when you're standing in front of them versus this to someone when you're on the phone. So things like that, all those rules of engagement. Do you think that young adults have a real dearth there of understanding how to communicate? Are they stunted because of the electronic, the technology age? Do you think? And do you think that's causing part of this too?
I have never honestly thought about it having to do with the electronic age, because I think overall, good communication skills is something all of us could benefit from. And it's emotional maturity. It's being able to have a conversation with someone without having to prove you're right or having to convince someone that your side is the right side. And I'm thinking about some of the things I'm seeing in the media where it's all about you're right, you're wrong, and I'm right. Or, this person needs to be detested, but that person is okay. This is good and that is bad. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of as a country and as a world. But I don't think that being on a screen 24/7 is healthy at all, because you're not learning how to speak. But for the most part, I know my generation, we did not learn about emotional maturity and keeping ourselves together. We learned how to argue. I grew up in a very vocal Italian American home. And when we had something to talk about, it was never done quietly. You know, so that's what you,
I know
we
that.
didn't learn how to speak quiet, so, and I think that gets passed on. What do you teach your kids if that's what like if you want
Right.
them to do something, you don't just say, oh, would you please go get the mail? You get the mail. You know what I mean? So I think we pass that on.
Yeah.
Um,
The whole "Why are you yelling?" I'm not yelling, right?
no, I'm not yelling. This is just me. I'm passionate. So, but yeah, I think that we can all benefit by learning how to communicate, not being so concerned about getting our point across, but rather, hey, can I learn more about what you're saying, and being interested in the other party? That I think is what really we could benefit by, instead of all this, oh my God, this person is so terrible. And
Yeah, yeah. I think I agree with you there. I did a podcast with an author like about 3 months ago, and I'm actually doing another one going on her podcast next week. And she wrote a book. She wrote a great book about communication. And what she did was, where it came from, the whole premise was her parents were immigrants, Mexican immigrants, and she grew up here, and they came over, and they had very different views on many, many things. And but it was because she wanted to communicate with them and understand them, because she loved them so much that she worked towards bridging and understanding their views. And I think that we to your point, we become a country that if you don't agree with me, I can't talk to you. And that's really wrong. And we've also become a country where, and goes back to not being able to communicate, where our young adults are communicating with each other, but they don't have the interaction with older adults to help guide them. And you know what I'm saying? Because there are a couple of guests I've had on that have said why they chose to homeschool, or what they believe is that taking young children out of an environment where they learn to communicate with people of every age is very unhelpful right now, because of the internet. They're really only talking to themselves, and it's leaving them to only like really raise themselves, because the primary period of dominant influence that a parent has over their child is up to age 7. After that, it's already in the decline. And then you get the larger world. By 15, they're all among their peers and their environment and whatnot, and that seems to be the primary influence. So I see a lot of all of that mushed together, which is causing these issues.
So I'm curious, are you saying that having children grow up in schools helps them?
I think having, well, certainly being able to communicate with an older teacher is one thing that is helpful, but they're not getting enough interaction with older adults. They're not getting that school of teaching where they know how to then go out and speak to an adult. They know, they're just speaking to each other. They're leading. It's like I don't want to use sheep because I hate that term, but let's just say sheep speaking with sheep. I mean, and it's like so you have they're each leading each other, and that's seems to be what's happening. They're not learning to communicate beyond themselves, so they get stuck in this mindset. They get stuck in that group group of thinking, and that's why you get things that trend. Why all of a sudden they'll go on one pathway out the door, all of them following each other.
Yeah, there is this type of sort of, well, you're calling it a sheep mentality, but
I
it's
hate,
true.
yeah, I
Oh,
hate
no,
that.
you know what it is? It's herd mentality.
Yeah, heard. Thank you.
Herd. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think we do it too. The older adults do it as well. You find people all talking about a similar thing. Yeah, you know what? And that's what happens in extended families where you used to have like grandma lived right down the block, and your aunt was not too far away, and everyone was together. And, yeah, they had their problems, but they still had a lot of communication. There was a lot of people minding the children and being involved in the children's lives. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different time, which is it. It's hard to navigate for all of us.
Right. No, it is. And that's why we need good people to help everybody get through, right? Let me ask you. So you come at this from a more holistic approach. So I'm going to ask you, what are some of the suggestions that you could give to estranged parents to help them cope with their grief and the anxiety, the grief, the sleeplessness, the ambiguous loss? How do you get them to even see a smidgen of light so that they can walk towards it, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking that question, because I wish that all of it was about having conversations with someone else, and that's going to help you feel better. Ventilation and talking is good. We feel so much better when someone sees and hears us, and that's very comforting. But the real work happens also when you're alone and you just wake up in the morning and you remember that your kid doesn't want anything to do with you, and your heart's in two, and you have anxiety because you don't know if they're going to answer the letter of amends, and you're ruminating, and then you don't want to go out and be around people, and you should stop overeating. I mean, those are the moments where you really need the help. And there's a few things that I tell people is to pick a mantra. And I love that Dr. Coleman says this in his book. Has a lot of gems in Rules of Estrangement, but one of them is you did the best you could. Now, here's the rest of it. You did the best you could with the resources you had at the time. And that opens the door for recognizing, hey, I was part of the Imperfect Parent Club. So in case you need to do some reflection, you're not going to be completely annihilated within yourself that you have to reflect, okay? Because that goes on too. The ruminating. What did I do wrong? Why do I deserve this? How come I got kicked to the curb? I must be such a terrible person. That's where the work happens. And the holistic end is pick your mantra, keep doing the self-talk, being compassionate with yourself and balancing the compassion with the reflection and
Mm.
saying, you know what, I do need to do some reflecting, but I better not stick with it 24/7. I got to do other things,
Right.
making sure you're around people who love and value you. I can't
Right.
say that enough. Like, if you're hanging out in a group where all it is a lot of negativity and hatred and people being upset, trust me, that is not going to help. You need to be around people that are supportive, loving. You know, they have goals too. They want to move forward. They're not just sitting in the muck.
Right.
Um, and also learning how to um, regulate. Now, this is kind of hard, but not quite. All right. So let me back up. I kind of misspoke. So we're going to have those moments where we're really anxious and we're very upset. Now you have to do things like breathing, meditating, sitting quiet and alone, watching a funny movie, like finding the things that work for you so you're not always sitting in the depth of your grief, because you will grieve and it's important to grieve, but you have to have moments of reprieve. I hope that answered your question. I could probably go on for about an hour, so I'm going to cap
Yeah,
it
and
there.
see, you were worried that we weren't going to even make time. I knew we would make time. You know what? I agree with you 100%. One of the things I do to take myself out of my space, there are a few things when my late husband passed away that I would do. I'd watch movies because they would engage my mind fully. So I would take step away from the grief for at least a moment. And then two, I started doing puzzles because again, these are exercises that just completely need your focus. And whether you realize it initially or not, it'll take you out of that moment. I also now, I did this years ago, but when I had little kids and I needed to focus on them, for periods of time, I put a ban on weekends, which means that, I didn't there was no business being done on weekends. And, I was ahead of two companies. I could have done business there 24/7 and, 7 days a week. But now, and I still do it today because I can't be sunk into this topic 24/7. It's not good, for me to be able to help other people. And it's certainly not good for me to help myself if you're constantly thinking about it and constantly. So that's a boundary I set on myself. And I think we have to try to do that for our own mental health as we're, going through this very, very painful, stressful, overwhelming time. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with
absolutely. I love that you did that. I think that a ban on weekends is wonderful. Yeah, like a ban on spending too much time in the grief of it. Like, go out, go do something,
yeah, yeah,
do something different.
yeah,
Uh, we
yeah.
have to.
Yeah, you have to be a person again, and there's so many things that, skills that you can develop too. I started learning to cook more Japanese and, do healthier snacks and treats. So I spend my weekends doing that. And then Andy will inevitably, is my administrator, he'll call me if he's got something. He's like, I hate to bother you on a weekend because he knows I'm just not gonna, you know. So I think, yeah, you have to, it's the fine line of walking in the now and trying to grieve the past. And you have to be able to compartmentalize a bit in that.
Yeah, you have to be able to do both. You have to move forward and process what's happened to you at the same time. And I wish I could remember the name of the woman who did this outstanding podcast about the loss of her husband. I mean, it was really beautiful. It was a TED talk. Gosh darn it, I hate when I can't remember things like that. But she was amazing. She hasn't forgotten her husband. She's even remarried. You
Mm,
don't forget, but you do move forward.
you do.
You
You do.
see, and that's really the where we have to what we need to look at. You could do both at the same time. You grieve and you move forward. And you
Yeah.
just keep going every day and be compassionate with yourself. Beating yourself up isn't going to work for too long. You could do it for a small amount of time if you want to. If you want to indulge, okay, go for it. 10 minutes. Put all the things down you want to beat yourself up about, and then move on. Move
Right.
on. Let it go.
Right, right, and you'll get there. It's not always going to be a fast process, but most change isn't anyway. So you just have to keep going and keep one step forward, two steps back, and then sometimes two steps forward and one step back. So it's okay. Okay, I like that word compassion. I think self-compassion is where the parents who are estranged seem to be some of the toughest parents on themselves. And it's probably, and some of actually the most caring parents, provided they really didn't cause any abuse or neglect of some. That's a completely different parent than what we're generally addressing in this podcast. So, well, thank you for coming on. You're wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
You'll come back sometime. We'll revisit with you and see how things are going in your own work. And yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. And I will make sure that you get all the links and everything from this podcast.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your work week and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. I will. You take care. All right.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye. So see, she's lovely. So there you go. We're ending another episode of Doormat Mom No More. Before we go, I'm going to once again share the book, Doormat Mom No More, available on Amazon. Get it. It's a great book, and it definitely speaks to community, which is, we don't heal alone. We heal in a community. And that's why I started this entire platform. So, and then the new app, Doormat Mom No More, Doormat Mom Now. And that will introduce you to other estranged parents in your area. So if you want to meet up and have coffee with someone who's going through what you're going through, right in your own backyard, download that app. It's free. The download is free. The first 3 months are free. And then it's less than $5 a month after that. Because no one should not be able to get the app because they're having some economic challenges right now. Many people are. So that's it. Thank you very much for being here. Take care. I'll see you next week. We have another wonderful guest, and don't miss it.